I am Prasanna. I'm the technical lead for mobile apps at realestate.com.au. I was doing this presentation a couple of weeks ago inside REA and in Mobile Guild to all the different teams. And I asked for feedback after the talk, and they said, it's good, presentation is good, the content is good, but clean it up, make the presentation nicer, say a good story. Unfortunately, I did not get the time to do that, so I just hope they're not lying about the good content. Right, releases. Today we're going to be talking about releases. We think it's not just about making a great app. We think releasing is a very important part of our apps, part of our jobs. When we release, about over 1.5 million users get our app updates across iOS and Android. Any of the stability issues affect consumer satisfaction directly, and that's one of our core metrics. And indirectly, it affects our customer satisfaction, which is the agents who pay our bill. So it's very important. Added to that are problems unique to mobile of being not able to roll back an app update, whereas an app API or a website, you roll back to the previous update and it's fine. Whereas you don't have that here, and along with the fact that you ship an app which has built-in state, persistent state over various versions of the app, it becomes really, really important to be very careful about releasing. And so with that as a background, let's talk about, this is what I'm going to be talking about. A little bit about what our various release models have been in the past. We've been releasing for about 9 years now, since 2010. Release trains, that's the model that we're using now. Why? How is it useful? All that. Weekly release trains, which we went to recently. I'll talk about why I think it is the best cadence today for us, especially. How did we go to this? There were some problems, and I'll talk about that, and the next steps and challenges. From 2010 to about 2015, we were doing a project-based releases. So essentially, a lot of people here were working on realestate.com.au app at the time. And I think this is the right model at the time. Because at the start, we were catching up to most of the web's feature list. Build a search results, build a saved search, saved property, all the features. If you want to run as fast as possible, you want to be building run as fast as possible for 3 months and then release that. That's what we were doing for a long time. I joined here around midway through this. I think at some point we started seeing the problem of we were running multiple projects, and when we wanted to release one of them, we started seeing problems. We were bumping into each other. And around 2015, we went to a release train model on a monthly cadence. We've been running this ever since. And let's talk a little bit about release trains itself. Release trains, how many people here are in a release train model for their app releases? Not a lot. These are all our team, so there's nobody else. So release train is essentially releasing the app at an agreed cadence. You agree that it's a monthly or a weekly or a fortnightly cadence, and you just release the app at that time. The main idea here is that the train does not wait for passengers. So you just, regardless of what features are ready, the release ships. Wait long for passengers. Sometimes features will, important features, go-to-market strategy, marketing campaigns, make the trains delayed sometimes, but most of the times it doesn't wait. The main idea here is not just about at the agreed cadence. It's mainly about separation of concerns between releasing and the projects itself. So if you're working on a project and deployment of a project should not be related to releasing, that really helps when you have multiple teams and when you have multiple projects running at the same time. When we went to the monthly release train, let's have a quick look at what that looked like. This is kind of what it looked like. The train arrives. The period here is how long the train is in the platform for, kind of analogy. The train arrives. We look at all the toggles that needs to be removed. What are the features that can go out in this release? We're talking about monthly here. We remove those toggles and then do a regression testing. There's a suite of regression testing that runs for the whole team sits down for about a couple of hours and does a regression testing. A bunch of bugs come out of that, and we fix that over 3 days to 3 weeks approximately, depending on how big the release is. Now, we could be working on a feature for months and 10 months sometimes, and that goes out in this release, and that blows out the number of bugs that we have in that. And then towards the end of that, we do a smoke test based on all the bug fixes we've just done. It's a shorter amount of time. Most of the times it's just the QAs doing that, and then we submit it to the apps. We've been running that, like I said, for about three and a bit years, and it was working very well. But we started seeing some of the problems as we went. I'll talk about some of those. This immediately from the start, we started seeing that people were scrambling to get onto the train, get onto a specific train. We'll come up to a release, and we'll start getting messages from product managers from our team, from various other teams, going, "Hey, can you tell us when you'll release? Can you push it back by 3 days? We just need 3 days to release this feature. This is really important. There's a marketing campaign going," and all that kind of things. And to be fair, the penalty of missing a release was a whole month. We put it on ourselves to that they were coming to us with that. This is a really important one for us. When we are trying to prove out a user feature, consumer feature, and we are doing experimentation, and we want to be doing experiment. We don't want to be running based on opinions of people. We want to be running based on experiments. And when you do an experiment and you get a result back, you want a quick feedback loop. You want to do a further experiment based on what you just found out very quickly. In a monthly release train, it takes a whole month to do that, and that's not very good. And last year, I talked about how we're scaling mobile to the whole organization, and how various other teams can now make features for the mobile apps, and we've created an architecture for that. In that model, we the platform team, which is our team, is our core metric is developer satisfaction from other teams. And when we ask them, this is one of the worst, this is the first thing that they have in there. Monthly is just too long. We are having to wait. We're having to depend on the platform team's releases for far too long. And based on that, we knew that we really wanted to go to a weekly release model, weekly release train model. But we also knew that it is really, really hard. It's not that, based on the fact that each release went to about 2 to 3 weeks. And the fact that the manual regression tests was two whole hours, and the bug fixes was taking that long, that if we do that every week, it's just really hard. And we thought we needed automated tests to be able to do this really well. So it was very clear, if we keep doing what we are doing, we could not go to a weekly release train. So we got this idea last year around experimenting with weekly release trains. So what we ended up doing was, for about 6 weeks, during the Christmas break, when there are not a lot of teams making a lot of new features. So starting from mid-December to end of January, we decided to go with a weekly release every week. So there was no pressure on the team to keep going after, so we just wanted to find out what that looks like. It is perfectly fine to abort the mission in the middle of the experiment. So we made that very clear that this is we're going out on a limb by doing this. We wanted to confirm bottlenecks in the release process. We had some hypotheses. This is probably what it is, but we didn't know because the feedback was, we had to wait for a whole month. There was just so much to release that we just couldn't prove it out. And we wanted to shorter feedback loop so that we can improve on the process really quickly. It would have taken 6 months for us to do the same amount of releases, so that just we wanted to do. And then it was very clear to everybody that we will go back to normal, which is a monthly release cycle, after this was over. Right, we put together some experiment rituals for these 6 weeks. What we were going to do was we were going to run a retro every week within the teams itself, within the platform team itself. We got a lot of feedback from the other teams, but it was being run by the platform team only. We kept a journal of this public journal of all the experiments we did every week, so we were keeping, like, these are the things we are trying this week, and this is how it worked out, kind of journals, and which recorded all the features that were going out, all the bugs, number of bugs that we created, and the number of bugs we fixed, a series of hypotheses, and we also did this across iOS and Android. The first couple of weeks, we formed our primary hypothesis, and the primary hypothesis that we created was that the biggest bottleneck is we find the bugs, and then fixing those bugs was the biggest bottleneck. And that was our hypothesis, and we decided that if we turn those bugs off, and then send it back to the feature teams who created those features, and they can come back in the next release, that'll solve most of our, that'll reduce the release process itself really small. Sending it back to the release teams itself, the feature teams itself, it was never a possibility in the previous model, because sending it back for a whole month, it was just not an option. Now it was just a week, so it was an option on the table. This is what that looked like. The train arrives. You'll notice that the removal of the toggles is not part of the release process anymore. The teams themselves, whenever they are ready to remove a toggle, the teams run a go, no-go meeting inside the team. They'll look at it and go, okay, from a QA point of view, this looks good. From a design point of view, it looks good. The product is happy with that. The marketing campaign is running. So they will remove the toggle. If the toggle is off the train, it doesn't even matter to the release stream. We do a regression test based on what we have. All the teams come in to do the regression test with us. If we find a bug in one of the features, the feature is turned off, where toggles are really important. We'll talk about that a little bit more. And then we keep going. The release team keeps going. The yellow line is the feature team itself. We do a smoke test if it is needed. Most of the times it is the same build we did the regression test with, so we do not have to do a smoke test, and then we submit to the app, and that's it. Since January, we've been able to submit the apps in 2 to 3 days. Looking at that, we tried that for 6 weeks. In the first few weeks, it was very clear that we could do this. We did not have to do anything else. We did not have to write whole automated suite to move to this world. So we went about, in the next 3 weeks or 3 to 4 weeks of the experiment, we went about operationalizing it. So it's one thing to do an experiment. It's one thing to tell everyone, say, just don't bother us for 6 weeks. It's another thing to, when features are coming in every week, how does that work? And we have 30 teams, 30 people approximately inside consumer. There's other teams. There's about 40 mobile developers building apps right now, contributing to the consumer app at the moment. So that's a lot of work that goes in. A very important thing that goes into the app to make this possible is toggles. We've all used them for years now. A couple of things, couple of rules, we asked all the teams follow. Toggles are used in a couple of different places. One, when the initiative is in progress. When it is in progress, make sure your toggled off code is rock solid. So every time you make a commit, it is very real. It is going out to consumers in the next couple of hours maybe. So make sure your toggled on state is where the master state, where what is going on to production is rock solid. So you will do a smoke test, and your QA will focus on that, and wherever possible, try to duplicate code instead of changing production code. So if you're changing let's say the landing screen, you're making changes there, you're making experimentation there, duplicate that and create a new thing, and then delete it once your experiment is over, creating a lot of state in your existing classes. So you're testing a lot more in that case. That's initiatives in progress. When initiatives are ready to be released, do a smoke test in your own team with your QA, and then when you come to regression tests, talk about that. Tell the whole platform team about it, and test it with them. You add the test cases to that and test it with them. So that was a really important, the fact that the toggles are removed in your own teams and it is not part of the release process. That has helped us a lot. The second thing that has helped is this. counterintuitively removing, not telling people when a build is cut, not telling people when a release is going out. Really, they know that it'll go out within the week, but they really don't know when it is being cut. And anytime anybody asks, hey, I really want to make a commit, like a PR, quick PR, what is my cutoff date? It doesn't matter. Come back next week. It's fine. It'll go out within the week, and that's a really good conversation to have. Sometimes people do message specific people and still ask, but most of the times it's fine. So since last December, we operationalized this in January. We've been running weekly release trains since then. Let's talk about some of the challenges we faced. The platform team was doing a really important property detail, like we were rewriting our whole of a property detail screen in the new architecture while we were doing this as well. Like, we did take this on in a quieter period, but still it is a lot of work for that team, especially when we've told nobody disturb us. Nobody disturbed us, nobody also helped that team, so that's a lot of pressure on that team. Knowing what I know now, I would have asked for more people or just slowed the delivery work a lot more. Moving to the new mindset of we were in the monthly release train model, but we still did not have this mindset of whatever I write now will go out in the next couple of days, sometimes in hours. That mindset just did not exist. And I think we're slowly getting rid of that mindset. It's you're testing your own code as you go. That is a mindset that is largely in the mindset, but it's also we still have this regression test. I would love to get rid of the regression test and people just that safety net, remove the safety nets for the developers, but I don't know how. It's a pretty risky move. Ongoing overhead of the release trains on a single team. The platform team does this work, and that is quite a bit of an overhead. We did some measurements. It is less overhead than what we were doing on a monthly release because we're just not doing the to and fro of the bug fixes, and all that is just gone. But it's still a lot of effort. It is less than what was before, but it's still a lot of effort. And around that, we have ideas around how to hopefully, with automated tests, we are starting to write some automated tests. We had the core cases. You could before do a search results property details. That was all the automated tests did. We're adding automated tests to see whether we can replace the regression tests with automated tests. We'll see how we go. And we also want to add Dogfooding, which is every day the nightly build goes out to all our staff. In Android, this is really good in that you can release it to the beta group. Whoever can sign up, and that works really well in Android. In iOS, that's still a problem. I don't know if our staff is they're not always looking for property, so it is a hard. I'm not sure if everybody will sign up to this Dogfooding. We'll have to try this out. I asked a bunch of our community on the CocoaHeads channel. Do you have any questions? What do you want to know about this? And some of the questions here. Why weekly? Why not fortnightly? A lot of the people that I asked were on a fortnightly model. We think fortnightly has many of the problems monthly has. It's still too long. It's between releases. It's still too long. The feedback loop is just a little too long. When you want to do an experiment and you want to do a further experiment, it's just 2 weeks. It's a little too long. Any less than a week is probably Apple probably won't like it. I don't know. We can try it. What is the overhead in the new release process versus before? Like I said before, it is a little bit of more. It is less effort than before in total amount of hours, but it is more frequent. It's probably a good thing in some sense in that you don't forget what you were doing between the last month and this month, but it is still a lot of effort. How does it change the conversation with product of federated teams? Federated teams is the external team. I should have removed that and changed the name. Federated teams on release planning. That they really don't think about releases anymore, which is a really good thing. That was our goal going in. All they think about is they remove their toggle and come to the regression tests, and that's it. That's very good. Does it take the pressure off dev teams from trying to meet a deadline? No, that's a different conversation altogether. I think this doesn't solve that, unfortunately. Does it fix the problem that people try to pull back the train to meet the release? Mostly, yes. Like we don't keep having this conversation again and again. We had one incident where one person like adamantly wanted, but you didn't tell us the time, so I want you to push it back. I was on holidays. I would have that would not have went in. Yeah. So that most of the times it's gone. That problem is gone. I think it is an easier. It's more than people misbehaving. It's more. We can understand why they don't. It's not a big deal anymore because they can just come back in a few more days. Where does QA and design revision fit into this process? Like I said before, the design, we have a native design system. When a feature is created, when a feature is started to work on, the platform teams help them a lot in design support and architectural support. And we write engineering docs, which I've talked about before, where people write about what they're going to do. They talk about their solution design, and we support them through the process. So it's not a single, like that's not one single problem. It comes at the end. This is taken care of throughout the period, throughout the development process. And QA, the teams are responsible for their own QA. Many teams do not have special QA roles. We do, the platform teams do, but many of the other teams do not. And the rest of the things, the regression test is taken care of for now. That's all the questions I had written there. Any more questions? Thank you. Baz.
Oh, I'm sorry, no.
Sorry, you have the mic.
I've got the microphone. So going to every week, I assume probably about 50 releases a year. How does that affect, I assume REA has a couple of guys working on the back end stuff. How does that affect for them working? Because I imagine you probably, that means that you probably got 50 versions of the app actually being used at any time. How does that affect the back end guys if they want to make changes to what they're doing?
Good question. This was asked by some other backend developer, and I didn't understand why this is a big deal, so I deleted that question. We have our companion API, which is our BFF. So most of the changes we make are in our own companion API, in there, and we've architected it. I think we haven't hit a problem where we're in deep trouble. We have architected it so that we think about backwards compatibility for our own apps. Other teams do not have to, generally. And our backend is very new. It's only been a year old, so any problems we'll see in a couple of years.
Thanks, Prasanna. Really good. I just have a question about if you release something and it goes wrong, what's the back out plan for that? Do people, are you capable of pushing a release like 2 hours later to fix a critical bug or whatever?
Right. So when we went out, like when we went with this crazy idea to everybody was very excited. Hi, this is excellent. If it works, it will be great. What if it doesn't work? What if we have this problem that you're talking about? So it is no worse or no better than what we had before in terms of risk, the stability risk, because we are still doing the regression test. We're still doing all those processes that we were doing. We used to have so many, like we've had bugs, as some of you might know, in the past that in the production app, and that doesn't change at all. There is not a lot of difference in our processes in that area. We haven't, thankfully, hit any of those yet. But the thing is, we're doing 2-hour regression test, and then every feature is tested by the QAs, by the teams themselves. The difference is they are more cognizant of the fact that things are going out in the next few days instead of taking that safety net. I think it's better overall. Yeah.
So I've got a quick question. On the management of the feature toggles, you mentioned copying code to maintain compatibility. How's the life cycle of a feature toggle managed? And do you have runtime ability to turn off a feature?
There are two different, good question. There's two different kinds of toggles. We run, like, mostly it is all feature toggles that is built, it's hard-coded toggles inside the code. And we also have remote toggles for a lot of experiments that we're running. We want to be able to roll it out, like, you know, when we roll out our new search results screen, we roll it out using the remote toggle. So 1%, 2%, so that we can slowly look at the metrics. In terms of the feature toggles, that generally toggles are removed as we go. I think at any given point we have about maximum of 20 toggles, and we remove them. I'm sure there are teams that leave it and for a while, but it's cleaned up manually at the moment. It's not enough of a, like, we don't end up creating 100 toggles that it is a problem right now.
Three wise monkeys have spoken.
How do you realize the CI/CD of the release cycle in your Git branching? Like, do you have a prod branch where you push things to for the weekly release cycle?
Say the last bit again.
Yeah, I can't express it. Do you have in your Git branching, do you have a prod branch where you take your weekly release cycle from and you push things to that branch in order for them to be included in the weekly release cycle?
Yeah, we branch off at the start of a release train. When the trainer has, we branch off, and then any more bug fixes, it goes into that kind of thing. Based on the number of releases where there were no more bug fixes that went into that release, the teams are trying to not even create a branch anymore. Just note down a build number and release off that, and only branch if you need to, if there is a bug fix that needs to go into that kind of model. Does that make sense? Yeah. Right. At the end of regression test, if you find a bug that absolutely needs to be fixed and it can't be toggled off, then we create a branch for release. Generally, it's just the master. That's the release branch. Any more questions? Thank you.